When someone with the authority of a teacher describes the world and you're not in it, there's a moment of psychic disequilibrium, as if you looked into a mirror and saw nothing. Courage is not defined by those who fought and did not fall, but by those who fought, fell, and rose again. My heart is moved by all I cannot save. So much has been destroyed I have to cast my lot with those who age after age, perversely, with no extraordinary power, reconstitute the world. There must be those among whom we can sit down and weep and still be counted as warriors. The connections between and among women are the most feared, the most problematic, and the most potentially transforming force on the planet. You must write and read as if your life depended on it. In a world where language and naming are power, silence is oppression, is violence. Every journey into the past is complicated by delusions, false memories, false namings of real events. Poetry is the liquid voice that can wear through stone. Every poem breaks a silence that had to be overcome. And education is not something that you get, but something that you claim. You have to be free to play around with the notion that day might be night, love might be hate. Nothing can be too sacred for the imagination to turn into its opposite or to call experimentally by another name. For writing is renaming. Art means nothing if it simply decorates the dinner table of power, which holds it hostage. The beauty of darkness is how it lets you see the most notable fact that our culture imprints on women is a sense of our limits. The most important thing a woman can do for another is to illuminate her actual possibilities. If you think you can grasp me, think again. My story flows in more than one direction. A delta springing from the riverbed with its 5 fingers spread. We can count on so few people to go that hard way with us, but nothing less than the most radical imagination will carry us beyond this place, beyond the mere struggle for survival, to that lucid recognition of our possibilities which will keep us impatient and unresigned to mere survival. Poetry is above all a concentration of the power of language, which is the power of our ultimate relationship to everything in the universe. The repossession by women of our bodies will bring far more essential change to human society than the seizing of the means of production by workers. The more I live, the more I think 2 people together is a miracle. Most women have not even been able to touch this anger, except to drive it inward like a rusted nail. The liar often suffers from amnesia. Amnesia is the silence of the unconscious. To work and suffer is to be at home. All else is scenery. A life I didn't choose chose me. Even my tools are the wrong ones for what I have to do. There is nothing revolutionary whatsoever about the control of women's bodies by men. The woman's body is the terrain on which patriarchy is erected. What would it mean to live in a city whose people were changing each other's despair into hope? You yourself must change it. Your mind now, moldering like wedding cake, heavy with useless experience, rich with suspicion, rumor, fantasy, crumbling to pieces under the knife edge of mere fact. In the prime of your life, if you are trying to transform a brutalized society into one where people can live in dignity and hope, you begin with the empowering of the most powerless. You build from the ground up. It's exhilarating to be alive in a time of awakening consciousness. It can also be confusing, disorienting, and painful. Art and literature have given so many people the relief of feeling connected, pulled us out of isolation. It has let us know that somebody else breathed and dreamed and had sex and loved and raged and knew loneliness the way we do. When one woman tells her truth, it makes a space for other women to tell their truths. Only where there is language is their world. The unconscious wants truth. It ceases to speak to those who want something else more than truth. Despair, when not the response to absolute physical and moral defeat, is like war, the failure of imagination. Revision, the act of looking back, of seeing with fresh eyes, of entering an old text from a new critical direction, is for women more than a chapter in cultural history. It is an act of survival. Motherhood in the sense of an intense reciprocal relationship with a particular child or children, is one part of female process. It is not an identity for all time. I am the androgyne, I am the living mind you fail to describe in your dead language, the lost noun, the verb surviving only in the infinitive. The letters of my name are written under the lids of the newborn child. We must use what we have to invent what we desire. The problem, unstated until now, is how to live in a damaged body in a world where pain is meant to be gagged, uncured, ungrieved over. The problem is to connect without hysteria the pain of anyone's body with the pain of the world's body. Until we know the assumptions in which we are drenched, we cannot know ourselves. No one sleeps in this room without the dream of a common language. It will take all your heart. It will take all your breath. It will be short. It will not be simple. The decision to feed the world is the real decision. No revolution has chosen it, for that choice requires that women shall be free. What kind of beast would turn its life? In 2 words, no one has imagined us. We want to live like trees, sycamores blazing through the sulfuric air, dappled with scars, still exuberantly budding, our animal passion rooted in the city. Pride is a tricky, glorious, double-edged feeling. I am a woman in the prime of my life, with certain powers, and those powers severely limited by authorities whose faces I rarely see, only to have a grief equal to all these tears, a decade of cutting away, dead flesh cauterizing old scars ripped open over, and still it is not enough. Experiences, always larger than language. The liar leads an existence of unutterable loneliness. I've had to guess at her, sewing her skin together, as I sew mine, though with a different stitch. Language is as real, as tangible in our lives as streets, pipelines, telephone switchboards, microwaves, radioactivity, cloning laboratories, nuclear power stations. Poetry can at its grain do an accumulation of consciousness against the idea that there is no alternative, that we're just in the great flow of capitalism and it can never be any different, that this is human destiny. This is human nature. We see daily that our lives are terrible and little, without continuity, viable and saleable at any moment, mere blips on a screen, that this is the way we live now, memory marketed as nostalgia, terror reduced to mere suspense, to melodrama, reality, the oppressor's tongue. Poetry can open locked chambers of possibility, restore numb zones to feeling, recharge desire. The serious revolutionary, like the serious artist, can't afford to lead a sentimental or self-deceiving life. Life on the planet is born of woman. TV has created a kind of false collectivity, whether abroad and whether in the heart, alike come on regardless of prediction. What we see, and seeing is changing. How we dwelt in 2 worlds, the daughters and the mothers in the kingdom of the sons. If the imagination is to transcend and transform experience, it has to question, to challenge, to conceive of alternatives, perhaps to the very life you are living at the moment. It is the suffering of ambivalence, the murderous alternation between bitter resentment and raw-edged nerves, and blissful gratification and tenderness. I'd call it love if love didn't take so many years, but lust too is a jewel. Abortion is violence, a deep, desperate violence, inflicted by a woman upon, first of all, herself. Poems are like dreams. In them you put what you don't know, you know. Responsibility to yourself means refusing to let others do your thinking, talking, and naming for you. It means learning to respect and use your own brains and instincts, hence, grappling with hard work. Adrienne Cecile Rich, May 16, 1929, March 27, 2012, was born in Baltimore, Maryland, the elder of 2 sisters. Her father, pathologist Arnold Rice Rich, was the chairman of pathology at the Johns Hopkins Medical School. Her mother, Helen Elizabeth Jones Rich, was a concert pianist and a composer. Her father was from a Jewish family, and her mother was a Southern Protestant. The girls were raised as Christians. Her paternal grandfather, Samuel Rice, was an Ashkenazi immigrant from Kois in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, present-day Slovakia. while his mother was a Sephardic Jew from Vicksburg, Mississippi. Samuel Rice owned a successful shoe store in Birmingham. Adriennerich was an American poet, essayist, and feminist. She was called one of the most widely read and influential poets of the second half of the 20th century, and was credited with bringing the oppression of women and lesbians to the forefront of poetic discourse. Rich criticized rigid forms of feminist identities and valorized what she coined the lesbian continuum, which is a female continuum of solidarity and creativity that impacts and fills women's lives. Adriennerich's early poetic influence stemmed from her father, who encouraged her to read but also to write poetry. Her interest in literature was sparked within her father's library, where she read the work of writers such as Ibsen, Arnold, Blake, Keats, Dante Gabriel Rossetti, and Tennyson. Her father was ambitious for Adrienne and planned to create a prodigy. Adriennerich and her younger sister were homeschooled by their mother until Adrienne commenced public education in the 4th grade. Her first collection of poetry, A Change of World, was selected by icon W.H. Auden for the Yale Series of Younger Poets Award. Auden went on to write the introduction to the book. Rich famously declined the National Medal of Arts to protest House Speaker Newt Gingrich's vote to end funding for the National Endowment for the Arts.